The crystal water glass exploded in Maeve's hand. Blood dripped onto the polished boardroom table. She didn't feel the pain. Terror stole her breath. She stared at the dissolution papers Marcus just handed her. 5 years of building their supernatural security firm together. Gone. He was taking it all. "It's just business, Maeve," Marcus said smoothly. Next to him stood Elena, the life coach. Elena smiled a sweet, fake smile. Maeve's empathic senses screamed. Elena felt like pure poison. Then, the heat hit her. A dizzying wave of it. It started in Maeve's chest and burned down to her fingers. She had to hide her hands. Her perfectly manicured nails were turning into sharp, dark claws. She was mutating. The ancient, dormant Lycan gene was waking up. It only happened to a rare few when they suffered massive trauma. Traditional packs hunted them down. They saw the mutation as an unstable curse. If Marcus saw this, he wouldn't just take her company. He would order her death. "You need to leave," Marcus told her. Without another word, Maeve turned and walked toward the glass doors. Her legs felt heavy. Her bones ached. Her gaze flicked to the reflective glass. Her hazel eyes were glowing with a bright, feral gold ring. Panic clawed at her throat. She pushed through the doors and ran. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. The fire under her skin grew hotter. She didn't know what scared her more, the betrayal of the man she loved, or the monster waking up inside her. She burst out of the high-rise lobby and into the pouring rain. The cold water felt good on her burning skin. Still, it wasn't enough to stop the shift. She needed a safe place. She needed to vanish. The corporate pack trackers would soon notice her scent changing. Where could she go? Her mind raced through the firm's classified security files. There was a rumor, a disgraced ex-alpha running an off-the-books clinic deep in the city's transit tunnels. He took in rogues. He hated the traditional packs. She had to find him. It was her only chance. The storm grew worse. Maeve stumbled down a narrow, trash-filled alley. Rain lashed her face. Her wet clothes clung to her shaking body. Every step was pure agony. Her spine popped. A low growl ripped from her throat. It didn't sound human. A terrible thought hit her. What if the rumor was wrong? What if the clinic didn't exist? She pushed the fear down. She had to keep moving. Stopping meant death. She found the rusted iron grate, hidden behind a dumpster. It matched the coordinates from the file. Her body moved on instinct. She gripped the heavy iron bars. Before the mutation, she could never lift it. Now, she ripped the grate out of the concrete with one heave. She stared at her hands in shock. The raw power was terrifying. She climbed down the dark, damp ladder into the tunnels. The smell of wet earth and rust hit her nose. Blood. Old blood. The flickering lights above cast long, creepy shapes on the walls. She limped forward. Her vision was getting blurry. The red haze of the beast was taking over. She gripped the cold brick wall to stay upright. She couldn't stop the change. Soft, silver fur started to push through the skin on her arms. "Help," she tried to whisper, but it came out as a whimper. Ahead, a heavy steel door stood slightly open. Warm yellow light spilled onto the wet floor. She dragged her feet toward it. She could hear a voice inside, a deep, gruff voice. Her chest ached. She was so tired. She just wanted the pain to stop. She reached the door and leaned her weight against it. The heavy metal creaked open. The room smelled of sharp antiseptic, fresh blood, and stale coffee. Maeve collapsed onto the hard tile floor. Harsh light burned against her eyelids. Footsteps. Heavy and fast. She forced her eyes open. A man stood over her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, covered in faded scars. His jaw was tight with anger. It was Vance Thorne, the exiled alpha. She recognized his face from the firm's blacklist. "What the hell is this?" Vance growled. His voice was like rough gravel. "Please," Maeve gasped. She curled into a ball as another wave of pain hit her. Hide me. Vance narrowed his eyes. He crouched down next to her. He didn't look gentle. He looked like a predator assessing a threat. You're Maeve Sterling, Marcus's lapdog. Why are you in my clinic? Hearing her name, a fresh wave of shame hit her. He threw me out. I'm changing. Vance grabbed her arm. His grip was strong but surprisingly warm. He yanked her sleeve up, revealing the silver fur and elongated claws. His breath caught. She saw the shock on his face. He knew exactly what she was. A trauma mutant, he whispered. You brought a death sentence to my door. I have money, she choked out. I can pay you. Just stop the pain. He stood up quickly. He walked to a metal counter and grabbed a syringe. I don't want your corporate blood money, Sterling. I should throw you back into the alley. Yet, he didn't. He walked back to her. This is going to knock you out, Vance said coldly. We'll deal with this mess when you wake up. As he pressed the needle to her neck, a wild instinct flared inside her. The beast didn't want to sleep. Maeve's hand shot out. Her sharp claws dug into Vance's thick wrist. She squeezed with bone-crushing force. He froze. His golden eyes locked onto hers. The space between them burned. Don't let them find me, she whispered fiercely. The sedative rushed into her veins. The world tilted. The dark edges of the room closed in. Maeve finally slipped into the blackness, still gripping the ex-alpha's arm. Maeve woke up to the bitter smell of bleach and old copper. Cold steel pressed against her back. She tried to sit up. She couldn't. Thick leather straps bound her wrists and ankles to a heavy medical cot. Panic clawed at her chest. She pulled against the restraints. The leather held tight. She needed to get out. Being tied down made her feel like trapped prey. Her mind raced to rebuild her corporate armor. She was Maeve Sterling. She negotiated million-dollar contracts. She didn't panic in dirty basements. Let me go, she demanded. Her voice cracked, but she forced it steady. Footsteps echoed in the dim room. Vance stepped out of the shadows. He wiped a bloody scalpel on a towel. He tossed it into a metal sink. He looked tired, angry, dangerous. You don't give orders down here, Sterling, Vance said. This is kidnapping. Untie me right now. My firm tracks my location. It was a lie. Marcus had locked her out of the system. She hoped Vance didn't know that. He let out a harsh, mocking laugh. Your firm threw you out. You came to my door. You begged for my help. Maeve lifted her chin. I offered to pay you. I don't care about your money. He stepped closer. You're a liability. You brought corporate heat to my sanctuary. She swallowed hard. The wild heat in her blood was still there. It buzzed just beneath her skin. She looked down at her hands. The claws were gone. Her skin was smooth again. I'm fine now, she lied. The episode is over. Just let me walk away. Vance leaned over her. His golden eyes locked onto hers. He smelled like rain, pine, and alpha authority. It's never over. You're a ticking bomb. She pulled against the straps again. I can control it. No, you can't. A low growl rumbled in her own chest. She clamped her mouth shut. She tried to swallow the sound. The beast inside her was answering his challenge. Would she ever be normal again? Untie me, she whispered. The corporate edge was gone. Only raw fear remained. Vance watched her for a long moment. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a cracked hand mirror. He didn't untie her. Instead, he held the glass up to her face. Look, he commanded. Maeve squeezed her eyes shut. She didn't want to see. She wanted to go back to her glass penthouse. She wanted her old life back. I said, look, Vance growled. The deep sound vibrated in her chest. Slowly, she opened her eyes. She gasped. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger. Her perfect blowout was a tangled mess. Her designer silk blouse was torn and stained with dirt. But then, she saw the worst part. Her hazel eyes were gone. A bright, feral gold ring circled her pupils. It was the mark of an unstable shifter, a rogue, a monster. "Your firm can't fix this, sweetheart," Vance said softly. His rough voice sent a strange shiver down her spine. Tears pricked her eyes. She refused to let them fall. "They will kill me," she whispered. "Yes, they will." He pulled the mirror away. "Marcus will send his best hunters. They won't ask questions. Marcus only cares about cleaning up loose ends." That harsh truth drained all the fight out of her. She went limp against the steel cot. The reality of her situation finally crushed her. She had no home. She had no pack. She had no future. A heavy silence filled the underground room. She could hear water dripping from a pipe somewhere down the hall. She wondered what terrible thing Vance had done to get thrown out of his own pack. The files never said. It was a dark secret he kept buried deep down here. Vance sighed. He ran a hand through his messy hair. "I run a clinic for people who have nowhere else to go, but I don't run a charity." Maeve looked up at him. A tiny spark of hope flickered in her chest. "What do you want?" she asked. "You have a choice," Vance said. "I can drug you again, drag you back up to the street, and let Marcus find you." He paused. He let the threat hang in the damp air. "Or?" she prompted. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Or you stay down here. You work for me." Maeve stared at the scarred ex-alpha. "Work for you?" she repeated. "Doing what?" "I'm a security strategist. I don't know how to run a clinic." "I don't need a strategist," Vance said flatly. "I need an empath." Her breath caught. She had spent years hiding her empathic abilities. In the corporate world, feeling other people's emotions was a weakness. Now, he wanted to use it. "My clinic is flooded with traumatized rogues," Vance explained. "They come in broken, terrified, and volatile. I can set bones. I can stitch wounds. But I can't calm them down. You can." She shook her head. "I can't even control myself." "I'll teach you how to anchor the mutation," he offered. "I will show you how to control the shift. In exchange, you use your empathy to triage my patients. You keep them from tearing my clinic apart." It was a harsh bargain. Was she trading one prison for another? Yet, looking at Vance's hard, unyielding face, she sensed something different. He wasn't lying to her. He wasn't manipulating her. He was offering an honest deal. "What if I hurt someone?" she asked softly. "I won't let you," he replied. His tone left no room for doubt. She closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. She couldn't go back. The trackers were already hunting her scent. She had to survive. She agreed to the deal. Surviving was the only way to get her revenge. She opened her eyes and met Vance's golden stare. "Deal." Vance didn't smile. He just nodded. He reached down and unbuckled the heavy leather straps. First her wrists, then her ankles. Maeve sat up slowly. Her muscles screamed in protest. She rubbed her bruised wrists. Vance walked over to a metal cabinet. He pulled something out and tossed it onto her lap. It was a pair of faded, dark green medical scrubs. They smelled like strong soap and bleach. "Get dressed," Vance ordered. He turned his back to give her privacy. "Your shift starts in 10 minutes. Maeve looked at the wrinkled scrubs. They were a stark contrast to her tailored suits. They represented her new, gritty reality. She pulled her ruined silk blouse over her head. There was no turning back now. The dark green scrubs were stiff. They smelled like harsh bleach. They hung loosely on her frame. Maeve stared at her reflection in the small bathroom mirror. She looked nothing like the CEO who commanded boardrooms just 24 hours ago. She took a slow, shaky breath. She pushed the bathroom door open and stepped out into the clinic. The waiting area was a chaotic nightmare. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The air was thick with the scent of blood, damp fur, and absolute terror. 5 rogue shifters sat on metal folding chairs. They looked battered and exhausted. The heavy steel door to the tunnels slammed open. 2 men carried a young boy inside. The boy was thrashing violently. His eyes were wide and fully gold. He was stuck midway through his shift. Claws tore at the men holding him. A desperate snarl ripped from his throat. "Put him on table 3!" Vance barked from across the room. Maeve froze. Her corporate instincts screamed at her to call security, to lock the doors. Instead, she stood frozen as the men slammed the boy down on the metal table. "Sterling!" Vance yelled. He was struggling to hold the boy's shoulders down. "Get over here! Now!" She moved on instinct. She rushed to the table. The boy snapped his jaws at her. His fear was a physical force. It slammed into Maeve's chest like a sledgehammer. "He's caught in a trauma loop," Vance grunted, dodging a swipe of the boy's claws. "Anchor him. Use your empathy." Maeve stared at the boy. She had spent her whole life building walls to block out other people's emotions. To let this boy's terror in would mean dropping all her armor. I don't know how," she stammered. "Stop thinking like a CEO," Vance growled, his golden eyes locking onto hers. "Feel him." She swallowed hard. She reached out. Her trembling hands hovered over the boy's chest. She closed her eyes. She let the defensive walls in her mind fall away. Instantly, the boy's raw panic flooded her veins. It burned. It was a suffocating wave of loneliness and fear of being hunted. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't fight the feeling. She absorbed it. She pushed back with her own energy. She projected a deep, solid wave of calm, of safety, protection. "You're safe," she whispered. Her voice was surprisingly steady. "Nobody is hunting you here." With every heartbeat, she pushed more warmth into his mind. The boy's thrashing slowed. His frantic snarls turned into soft whimpers. The fur on his arms began to recede. His golden eyes faded back to a soft, human brown. He went limp on the table, falling into an exhausted sleep. Maeve pulled her hands back. She was breathing heavily. A fine layer of sweat coated her forehead. A profound sense of satisfaction bloomed in her chest. She had actually helped someone, not with money or contracts, but with her true self. She opened her eyes and looked across the table. Vance was staring at her. The harsh anger was gone from his face. In its place was a quiet, unreadable respect. The transit tunnels beneath the clinic were pitch black, freezing cold. Water dripped from the cracked concrete ceiling. The air smelled of old iron and decay. Vance walked a few paces ahead of her. He carried a heavy flashlight. The beam cut through the thick darkness. "To control the mutation, you have to let it out on purpose," Vance said without turning around. His voice echoed off the damp walls. "You have to push yourself to the edge of the cliff. Then you learn how to step back." Maeve wrapped her arms around herself. "And if I fall off the cliff?" Vance stopped. He turned around slowly. "Then I catch you." His words sent a sharp heat straight to her core. She ignored it. She lifted her chin, putting on her best corporate mask. "I don't need you to catch me. I need you to teach me." A slow, dangerous smirk spread across Vance's scarred face. He set the flashlight on a rusty barrel. "Show me then, Sterling." "Shift." She frowned. "I can't just do it on command. Because you're too busy holding on to your polite society manners," he taunted. He took a slow step toward her. "You think you're still the boss. You think your money protects you down here." Anger flared in her chest. "Stop it." He took another step. He was entirely too close now. His scent surrounded her. Pine needles, rain, and raw male power. "Marcus took everything from you," Vance whispered softly. "He didn't even break a sweat. He just tossed you in the garbage." "Shut up," she hissed. Her blood began to boil. The terrifying heat rushed into her hands. "He stole your life. He replaced you with a fraud. A low rumble started in Maeve's chest. Her spine popped. Her vision tinted red. The golden ring flared in her eyes. "There she is," Vance murmured. Maeve lunged at him. She moved with blinding, inhuman speed. Her claws slashed through the air. Vance dodged the strike. He grabbed her wrist and twisted. She spun out of his grip. She kicked his legs out from under him. He hit the concrete hard. Before he could recover, she threw herself on top of him. She pinned his shoulders to the wet ground. Her claws pressed against his throat. She was panting heavily. The beast roared in her ears. She wanted to tear. She wanted to destroy. Vance didn't move. He looked up at her from the floor. He didn't look afraid. His eyes were dark and focused. "Now," he whispered softly. "Pull it back." She bared her teeth. "I can't." "Yes, you can." He slowly lifted one hand. He traced the line of her jaw with his thumb. His touch was gentle. "You are stronger than the rage, Maeve. Come back to me." Hearing her name on his lips broke the spell. The red haze shattered. The claws resting against his neck retracted. The gold fire in her eyes faded back to hazel. She suddenly realized what position they were in. She was straddling his hips, her chest pressed flush against his. She could feel the rapid thumping of his heart beneath her. The space between them burned. Her breath caught. She looked down at his lips. For a single heartbeat, the world narrowed down to the two of them. He tilted his head up, just a fraction of an inch. She scrambled off him. She backed away, her face burning with heat. "I pulled it back," she said quickly. Her voice trembled. Vance sat up slowly. He didn't break eye contact. "Yeah," he said quietly. "You did." The small office at the back of the clinic was dead quiet. Maeve sat at a scratched metal desk. The glow of a stolen burner laptop lit up her face. She typed furiously. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. This was her true element. She was locked out of the firm's front doors, but she had built the backdoor architecture herself. Marcus was arrogant. He wouldn't think to change the ghost protocols she coded 3 years ago. She bypassed the main firewall. She needed to move her personal offshore funds before Elena realized they existed. The screen blinked. She was in. She initiated the transfer protocols. A strange string of code caught her eye. It was an active data stream. It was running silently in the background of the firm's secure server. She frowned. She leaned closer to the screen. The data was heavily encrypted. It was being routed to an external IP address. Who was stealing data? She tapped a sequence of keys to isolate the stream. She ran a quick decryption algorithm. The header file popped onto the screen. Her stomach dropped. The room felt freezing cold. The sender was listed as Elena's private administrative account. The life coach. Marcus's sweet, validating new partner. Maeve's heart pounded against her ribs. She looked at the destination IP. She ran a trace. It bounced through 3 proxy servers before landing on a dark web node. A node specifically flagged in Maeve's old threat assessment files. It belonged to the Silver Vanguard, a ruthless human hunting syndicate. "No," Maeve whispered into the empty room. Elena wasn't just a homewrecker. She was a corporate spy. She was systematically siphoning the highest-level security secrets of the supernatural community. Maeve clicked open the active file transfer. Rows and rows of coordinates flooded the screen. It was a hit list. Locations of vulnerable packs, safe houses, and rogue clinics. A cold weight settled in her chest. Elena was feeding their kind to the hunters. A red warning box flashed on the screen. Connection intercepted. Trace initiated. They knew she was watching. Elena's security team had found her back door. Maeve slammed the laptop shut. The loud crack echoed in the small office. She jumped out of her chair. Her breathing was shallow and fast. The threat wasn't just Marcus finding her anymore. The entire supernatural community was about to be slaughtered. And Elena now knew that Maeve was out there. She had to tell Vance. The war was coming straight to their door. Maeve sprinted out of the back office. Her bare feet slapped against the cold tile. Vance was wrapping a bandage around a rogue's arm. He looked up. His senses caught her panic. "Vance," she breathed. She shoved the laptop into his chest. He caught it. His golden eyes scanned the screen. She watched the muscles in his jaw tighten. "Elena is selling coordinates to the Silver Vanguard," Maeve said. Her voice shook. "She's selling everyone." Vance slowly shook his head. "Marcus is a corporate snake. He's greedy. But he wouldn't sanction human hunters." "He doesn't know," Maeve insisted. "Elena is playing him. She's using his access." Vance handed the laptop back. His face was a mask of cold fury. "Pack your gear. We're leaving." "Where?" "The docks. I have an informant at a neutral bar. I need to verify this intel." They took the hidden maintenance stairs up to the surface. The city was dark. The rain had stopped, leaving a thick, freezing fog. The bar was called the Iron Kettle. It sat at the edge of the shipping yards. Inside, it smelled of stale beer, cheap cigars, wet fur. The patrons were a mix of vampires, rogues, and shady humans. Vance walked straight to the back booth. Maeve stayed close to his side. Her empathic senses went wild. The air in the bar felt completely wrong. It felt sharp, metallic. The front doors of the bar locked with a loud, heavy click. The low hum of conversation stopped. 4 men stood up from a table near the exit. They wore heavy tactical gear. They didn't smell like shifters. They smelled like gunpowder and cold iron. Hunters. The man in the front drew a long, silver-laced blade. "Vance!" Maeve screamed. A hunter lunged at her. She didn't have time to shift. She braced for the impact. Vance was faster. He threw himself in front of her. The silver blade missed Maeve. It plunged deep into Vance's side. Vance let out a deafening, primal roar. He didn't fall. He grabbed the hunter by the throat and threw him across the room. The bar erupted into chaos. Patrons scattered. Tables flipped. "Run!" Vance shouted. He grabbed her hand. Blood poured from his side. He dragged her toward the kitchen exit. He left a trail of red on the dirty floor. They barely made it back to the clinic. Vance collapsed onto the main surgical table. His breathing was ragged. Sweat poured down his face. Maeve ripped open his blood-soaked shirt. The wound was deep. The edges of his skin were blackened and smoking. Silver poison. It was burning him from the inside out, stopping his Lycan healing factor. "Don't move," Maeve ordered. Her hands shook violently. She ran to the metal cabinets. She grabbed heavy forceps, sterile gauze, a bottle of chemical wash. She rushed back to the table. Vance's golden eyes were clouded with pain. "You have to get the silver shavings out," he grunted, "or it won't close." She swallowed hard. She pressed the forceps into the raw wound. Vance gripped the edge of the metal table. The steel bent under his fingers. He didn't scream, but Maeve felt his agony. Through her empathy, his pain crashed into her like a physical blow. She let the defensive walls in her mind fall away completely. She absorbed his pain. She pushed back with absolute, unyielding calm. "I've got you," she whispered. Piece by piece, she pulled the silver out. She flushed the wound. She stitched the torn skin with trembling hands. By the time she tied the final knot, she was exhausted. She stepped back. The bloody forceps clattered onto a metal tray. Vance let out a long, shaky breath. The blackened edges of the wound slowly began to turn pink. His healing was kicking in. He looked up at her. He saw the tears she was trying to hide. He felt the heavy, empathic bond she had just forged between them. He reached out. His large, blood-stained hand wrapped around her wrist. He pulled her gently toward him. The space between them burned. There were no corporate masks down here. There was no alpha hierarchy. There was just the two of them, bleeding and surviving in the dark. The remaining distance evaporated. Vance pulled her down. His lips crashed into hers. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. It was raw, consuming fire. Maeve tangled her hands in his hair. She kissed him back with everything she had. The taste of salt, sweat, and copper filled her mouth. A growl rose in her throat. Her wolf pressed forward, answering his dominant pull. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel broken. She felt entirely whole. The kiss ended as violently as it began. Vance broke away. He was breathing heavily. He stared at her lips for a fraction of a second. Then, his expression completely changed. The vulnerability vanished. The hard, rigid alpha mask slammed back into place. He slid off the table. He ignored the fresh stitches stretching tight across his ribs. "Vance?" Maeve asked softly. He didn't answer. He walked to a heavy steel locker in the corner. He punched in a code. The door swung open. Rows of tactical firearms and silver-plated ammunition lined the walls. Between them, something cracked. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Packing," Vance said coldly. He racked the slide of a heavy pistol. "The hunters knew I was at the bar. Elena's trace worked. That means they know the location of this clinic." He threw a black duffel bag onto the floor. He started tossing weapons inside. "Go to the back room," Vance ordered. "Take whatever cash is in the safe. There's a tunnel that leads to the old subway lines. Run as far as you can." Maeve stood frozen. "What about you?" "I'm staying," he growled. "I'm going to collapse the main entrance. I'll hold them off in the tunnels." He was shutting her out. He was retreating into his trauma. He believed he had to sacrifice himself to pay for his past failures. "No," Maeve said. Her voice rang out, clear and sharp. Vance froze. He turned to look at her. "This isn't a negotiation, Sterling. I am not leaving you here to die." She stepped forward. The gold flared bright in her eyes. "You think you can just push me away? After what just happened? I am trying to keep you alive," Vance roared. The sound echoed off the concrete walls. It was the roar of a desperate protector. Maeve didn't flinch. "You can't punch your way out of corporate espionage, Vance." She walked right up to him. She didn't let him look away. "Elena has the entire firm's network. She has infinite money. She has political cover. If you stay down here and fight, you will die, and the rest of our kind will die tomorrow." Vance's shoulders dropped. "I am a security strategist," Maeve said fiercely. "I built the fortress Elena is hiding in. You need my brain. We do this together, or we don't do it at all." Vance stared at her. The fierce, unyielding fire in her eyes challenged everything he knew. He let out a low breath. He dropped the pistol into the bag. "All right, Sterling," he said quietly. "What's the plan?" The plan was simple, but it felt like suicide. Maeve sat back down at the scratched metal desk. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She didn't run this time. Running only made you tired. Instead, she went on the offensive. She opened the firm's backdoor server again. She carefully crafted a fake data packet. She planted coordinates for a massive rogue hideout. In reality, the location was an abandoned train yard on the edge of the city. "Elena is monitoring the system," Maeve told Vance, her eyes glued to the screen. "As soon as I upload this, she will sell it to the Vanguard. They will send a strike team." Vance stood behind her. His heavy presence was a comforting anchor. "We are setting a trap for heavily armed human hunters," he said quietly. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I have to," Maeve replied. Stopping Elena was the only way to protect the innocent rogues. She hit the enter key. The fake data packet uploaded. Now, all they had to do was wait. They left the clinic and traveled through the dark transit tunnels. By the time they reached the surface, the moon was high in the sky. The abandoned rail yard was a graveyard of rusted metal and broken glass. The air smelled of old oil and damp gravel. They took cover behind a massive, rusted train car. Maeve's heart pounded against her ribs. With every heartbeat, the anticipation grew. She looked at Vance. He held his tactical pistol perfectly still. Would the hunters actually show up? A low, mechanical hum broke the silence. Headlights cut through the thick night fog. 3 black tactical vans rolled quietly into the rail yard. It was a terrifying display of military precision. A dozen men in heavy body armor poured out of the vans. They carried silver-laced assault rifles. They moved like shadows, sweeping the empty train cars. Vance gave her a single, sharp nod. It was time. Maeve closed her eyes. She reached deep inside her chest and found the wild, burning heat. She didn't fight the mutation this time. She finally understood she needed it to survive. Her bones shifted. Her claws tore through her fingertips. The golden ring flared brightly in her eyes. She was ready. Vance stepped out from behind the train car. He fired 3 rapid shots. The gunfire shattered the quiet night. The hunters immediately turned their weapons on him. That distraction gave Maeve her opening. She vaulted over the rusted metal coupling of the train. She moved with blinding, impossible speed. Before they could aim, she crashed into their flank. Her body moved on instinct. She disarmed the first hunter with a brutal swipe of her claws. She didn't kill him. She needed answers. Instead, she swept his legs and threw him to the gravel. "Hold the line!" the Vanguard captain screamed. They were no match for a fully realized Lycan and a battle-hardened alpha. Maeve fought with lethal grace. Vance fought with crushing power. They moved in perfect sync. They covered each other's blind spots. They anticipated each other's strikes. They protected each other's lives. Eventually, the gunfire stopped. The strike team was scattered and broken on the ground. Vance hauled the Vanguard captain to his feet. He slammed the man against the side of the metal train car. "Who sent you?" Vance growled. The captain laughed. Blood stained his teeth. "You think you won?" the hunter sneered. "This was just a scouting run." Maeve stepped closer. Her empathic senses pushed into the hunter's mind. She felt his arrogance. She felt his sick triumph. But beneath that, she felt a massive, terrifying secret. "What are you hiding?" she demanded. "Elena didn't just sell us this yard," the captain spat. "She gave us the master key. Tomorrow night, the entire Alpha Council is gathering in one place." Her world tilted. "The annual Pack Gala," Maeve whispered in horror. "That's right," the hunter smiled. "We are going to lock the doors. We are going to burn the building to the ground with every traditional alpha inside." Marcus was hosting that gala. He had organized the entire event. Did he know he was walking into a slaughterhouse? Vance knocked the captain out cold with the butt of his pistol. He turned to Maeve. The silence between them was heavy and dark. They dragged the unconscious captain into a secure lockup back at the clinic. Maeve sat on a cold metal bench. She stared blankly at the concrete floor. The annual Pack Gala. She used to plan that party. She used to pick out the centerpieces and arrange the security details. "Have you ever had to save the people who destroyed your life?" "We don't have to go," Vance said softly. He stood across the room, watching her carefully. "They threw you away. They banished me. If the Vanguard wipes out the Council, the traditional packs will fall. We will be free." He was right. If she did nothing, her revenge was complete. Marcus would burn. The alphas who hunted her kind would burn. Yet, a deep ache settled in her chest. She remembered the young, terrified rogue she had anchored on the medical table. If the traditional packs fell, the human hunters wouldn't stop. They would sweep the city. They would kill the innocent rogues next. She couldn't look away. "They are monsters," Maeve said quietly. "Marcus is a coward. The Council is corrupt." She stood up. The golden ring in her eyes glowed with fierce determination. "But if I let hundreds of people burn just to get my revenge, then I am exactly what they think I am. I am a monster too." Vance didn't argue. He simply nodded. A slow, proud smile touched his scarred lips. "You are a better alpha than Marcus ever was," he murmured. The space between them burned. She walked over to him. She reached up and rested her hand against his chest. His heart beat a steady, powerful rhythm beneath her palm. "We have less than 24 hours," she said. Her voice was a soft, dangerous promise. "We are going to walk into that gala. We are going to expose Elena in front of everyone. It's a suicide mission," Vance warned gently. "There will be hundreds of guards." "I built their security network," Maeve smirked. "I know every blind spot." He wrapped his hand over hers. The warmth of his skin sent a thrill straight to her core. "What's the dress code?" Vance asked, a dangerous glint in his eye. "Strictly formal," Maeve replied, stepping back toward the weapons locker. "We're going to the gala, and I'm wearing red." The tension in the clinic was thick. Maeve stared at the blueprints of the gala. She needed to memorize every exit. Vance stood by the weapons locker. He was loading magazines with cold precision. The main proximity alarm blared. A massive explosion tore through the front entrance. The heavy steel door blew off its hinges. A deafening roar of gunfire followed. Smoke filled the underground room. Elena's hunters had found them. They didn't just find the trap at the rail yard. They traced the signal directly to the hidden clinic. She didn't know what scared her more: the heavily armed men pouring into the room, or the fact that her new sanctuary was destroyed. Vance grabbed her arm and threw her behind the surgical table. Bullets sparked against the metal. "Get to the back tunnels!" Vance yelled over the gunfire. Maeve tried to shift to help him fight. A hunter fired a rocket launcher at the main support beam above them. The massive explosion rocked the entire foundation. Chunks of the concrete ceiling began to collapse. Vance was faster. He threw himself under the falling rubble. He caught a massive, ton-heavy concrete pillar on his back. He was holding the escape tunnel open for her. His knees buckled. Blood poured from his mouth. "Run, Maeve!" he choked out. The ceiling sank lower. The hunters were advancing through the thick smoke. If she ran away, he would be crushed to death. Maeve refused to leave him behind. A growl rose in her throat. The terrifying heat exploded in her veins. She didn't hold it back this time. She embraced the beast entirely. Saving him was more important than her fear of the monster. Her claws lengthened. Her muscles expanded with raw, primal power. She charged right into the falling debris. "No," Vance gasped. She ignored him. She wedged her shoulders under the crushing concrete pillar next to him. She planted her bare feet on the cracked floor. With a furious roar, she pushed upward. The hunters started firing at them. Silver bullets grazed her arms and burned her skin. She didn't let go. She hoisted the concrete slab high enough. She grabbed Vance by his tactical vest and yanked him backward. The ceiling completely collapsed right where he had just been standing. She dragged him through the thick smoke and into the dark sewer tunnels. The clinic burned behind them. Her home was gone. They waded through the filthy, freezing water. Vance was losing blood fast. Silver shrapnel had pierced his chest armor during the blast. They found an iron ladder. Maeve forced the heavy manhole cover open. They climbed out into a dark, rainy alleyway. They stumbled into an abandoned apartment building. The room was dark, cold, and smelled of rotting wood. She laid Vance gently on the dusty floorboards. He was gasping for air. His skin was turning pale. Maeve ripped open Vance's heavy tactical vest. A jagged piece of silver-laced metal was buried deep in his chest. The toxic poison shut down his Lycan healing completely. Black veins spiderwebbed across his pale skin. Her hands shook violently. She pressed her palms against the wound to stop the heavy bleeding. Vance reached up. His cold fingers wrapped around her wrist. "Stop," he whispered. His voice trembled. "No," she said fiercely. "I am going to fix this." "You can't," he coughed. Blood trickled down his chin. "I'm done, Maeve." He looked up at her with dimming golden eyes. He finally confessed his darkest secret. "I killed them," he choked out. "My old pack. The hunters cornered us. I followed the Alpha Council's retreat protocols. I believed the rules kept us safe. I made my people wait, and they all died. A single tear tracked through the dirt on his scarred face. "I punish myself," he whispered. "I hide in the dirt. My leadership is toxic. Everything I touch dies." Her heart broke for the heavy burden he carried all these years. "You are the only beautiful thing I've touched in years," he breathed. "Leave me here. Go to the gala. Save yourself, before my curse kills you too." His eyes fluttered shut. His grip on her wrist went slack. Utter despair washed over Maeve. This was the lowest point. Her corporate logic, her strategy, her money, none of it could save the man she loved. True survival didn't come from perfect control. It came from raw vulnerability. She leaned over his dying body. She had one desperate, crazy idea left. Maeve made her choice. She refused to let the silver poison take him. She plunged her bare hands into Vance's open chest wound. The jagged piece of silver burned against her skin like battery acid. She screamed. The pain was absolute agony. It seared through her nerves. Yet, she didn't stop. Her Lycan claws gripped the toxic metal tight. She ripped the massive chunk of silver out of his chest and threw it across the room. It clattered loudly into the dark corner. Still, Vance wasn't breathing. His chest was perfectly still. His heart had stopped. She didn't know what scared her more. That he was actually dead, or the terrifying reality that she was entirely alone again in a world that wanted to hunt her. She pressed her bleeding, burned hands directly over his still heart. Instead of holding her empathy back to protect herself, she pushed every ounce of her raw Lycan life force directly into his chest. She didn't care if it drained her. She projected pure, unyielding survival. She demanded that his heart beat again. A loud, violent gasp shattered the silence. Vance's chest arched off the dusty floorboards. His golden eyes snapped open, wide and wild. He was alive. The black poison veins rapidly faded from his neck. His Lycan healing factor immediately began knitting his torn flesh back together. "You crazy empath!" he coughed. He stared in absolute awe at her burned and bloody hands. "I told you," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "I am going to fix this." Morning came. The brutal storm had finally passed. Weak sunlight leaked through the broken windows of the abandoned apartment. Vance was fully healed, though his movements were stiff and cautious. He walked to the corner of the room. He pulled a loose, rotted floorboard up from the dirt. It was an old, secondary weapons cache he had hidden years ago for absolute emergencies. He pulled out 2 sleek tactical pistols, a handful of silver-laced throwing knives, and a thick, plastic-wrapped burner phone. Maeve took the burner phone. She needed to access her frozen offshore accounts. She didn't use her corporate login. Marcus had completely destroyed that identity. Instead, she used a ghost account she had buried under layers of fake shell companies. Within minutes, she had secured a massive, untraceable withdrawal. It was a frantic, adrenaline-fueled rush across the city's underground black market. They needed armor. They needed weapons. They needed clothes that would let them walk right through the front door. By the time the sun began to set, they had everything they needed. They met back in a rented underground safe house. Vance stepped out of the bathroom wearing a sharp, tailored black tuxedo. It was cut perfectly to hide the heavy shoulder holsters strapped beneath the jacket. Moments later, Maeve stepped out of the fitting room. She wore a floor-length, blood-red silk gown. It clung to her curves tightly. A daringly high slit on the thigh perfectly concealed the silver blade strapped to her leg. She looked up. Vance stared at her. His golden eyes darkened with absolute, unfiltered desire. Her pulse raced. "You look like a queen," he murmured. "I look like a weapon," she corrected him. She slid a sleek black pistol into her hidden thigh holster. "Let's go ruin a party." The towering glass high-rise of the Alpha Council headquarters came into view. The annual Pack Gala was the most secure, elite event of the year. Every powerful Alpha in the territory was inside that building. Maeve's empathic senses picked up the cold, metallic scent of human mercenaries standing alongside the traditional werewolf guards. Elena had brought the silver vanguard right to the front door. They walked calmly toward the heavily guarded main entrance. A massive, heavily armed guard stepped right in front of them, physically blocking the heavy glass doors. Maeve raised her hand. She didn't flinch. She projected an aura of absolute, terrifying corporate authority. "Sterling, Maeve," she stated coldly. "Security override code Alpha 70. The guard blinked in confusion. He checked his digital tablet. She had personally built the firm's security system. Her master codes were hardwired into the foundational architecture. Elena couldn't erase them without deleting the entire power grid. The tablet chimed a bright, cheerful green approval. The guard swallowed hard and stepped aside. "Welcome back, Miss Sterling." They walked past him into the glittering, opulent ballroom. The room smelled of expensive champagne, roasted meats, and the overwhelming, arrogant scent of hundreds of alpha wolves. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the massive dancing crowd. Women wore diamonds. Men wore expensive suits. Nobody knew they were standing in a death trap. Beside her, Vance radiated quiet, lethal danger. Maeve spotted them standing on the grand VIP balcony overlooking the dance floor. Marcus stood in a crisp white tuxedo. He was laughing and holding a glass of champagne. Next to him stood Elena. The life coach wore a soft, innocent pink dress. Elena casually turned her head. Her eyes locked directly with Maeve's from across the crowded ballroom. Elena's sweet, fake smile instantly vanished. Pure shock drained the color completely from her face. The final push had officially begun. Glass rained down from the ceiling. The first gunshot shattered the massive crystal chandelier. Elena didn't hesitate. She raised her hand. She signaled the vanguard mercenaries hidden among the catering staff. Heavy steel deadbolts slammed shut over the ballroom doors. Absolute, terrifying chaos followed. Dozens of human hunters pulled silver-laced assault rifles from beneath serving carts. Screams echoed off the marble walls. The rich, powerful alphas of the council panicked. They were in formal wear, unarmed, and completely boxed in. Maeve didn't freeze. She had planned for this exact moment. She moved. Vance stepped in front of her. He drew his tactical pistols. He became a deadly shield of muscle and crossfire. He dropped 2 mercenaries before they could even aim. "Get to the sound booth!" Vance roared over the deafening gunfire. Maeve sprinted across the polished dance floor. She dodged overturned tables and terrified partygoers. Silver bullets chipped the marble columns right next to her head. She slid behind the heavy mahogany doors of the VIP audiovisual booth. She locked it from the inside. She pulled the thick burner phone from her thigh holster. She plugged it directly into the main mixing console. Her fingers flew across the digital soundboard. She wasn't just going to fight them with claws. She was going to fight them with the truth. Within seconds, she bypassed the gala's security firewall. She triggered the main screens above the dance floor. Elena's voice echoed through the massive ballroom speakers. "The council is gathered. Lock the doors and burn them all. The silver transfer is complete." The audio file played on an endless, booming loop. Financial records and hit lists flashed across the giant video screens. Down on the floor, the alphas stopped running. The shock on their faces quickly turned into violent, primal fury. They turned their glowing eyes toward Elena and her mercenaries. Maeve didn't stop there. She grabbed the edge of the soundboard. She closed her eyes. She let her empathic walls completely shatter. She felt Elena's sick, twisting panic. She grabbed that emotion and pushed it outward with all her Lycan strength. She forced every single werewolf in the room to feel Elena's undeniable guilt and treacherous poison. The Vanguard strike team didn't stand a chance against 100 angry, fully shifted alphas. The battle was brutal, bloody, and entirely one-sided. By the time the smoke cleared, the hunters were disarmed and broken. Maeve leaned against the mixing console. She gasped for air. She had done it. She had saved the people who threw her away. The heavy doors of the ballroom finally opened. Council guards swarmed the room. They dragged the surviving mercenaries away in heavy iron chains. Maeve walked slowly down the grand staircase. Her red silk gown was torn at the hem. Her bare shoulders were covered in dust. Elena was sobbing on her knees. Two massive guards hauled the life coach up by her arms. They dragged her out into the cold night. Maeve spotted Marcus. He stood in the center of the ruined dance floor. His crisp white tuxedo was covered in soot. He looked around at the destroyed ballroom. His face was pale with absolute shock. He had nearly died tonight. The woman he left Maeve for was the one holding the match. He turned and saw Maeve walking toward him. "Maeve," Marcus breathed. His voice was shaky and small. You saved us." She stopped a few feet away from him. She felt no anger anymore. She only felt a cold, deep pity. "I didn't do it for you, Marcus," she said simply. He took a desperate step forward. "I was wrong. I see that now. Elena manipulated me. We can rebuild the firm, Maeve. Come back to the penthouse. I can hire the best doctors. We can fix your mutation." A rich, feral laugh bubbled up from Maeve's chest. She looked at her hands. She thought about the raw, beautiful power she had used to save Vance's life in the dirt. She thought about the deep, thrumming connection of her empathy. "I don't need to be fixed," Maeve whispered fiercely. "I am not broken." She stepped closer. The bright gold ring flared in her hazel eyes. Marcus physically flinched. He took a step back. "Keep the firm," she told him. Her voice was cold steel. "Keep the glass tower. It's a cage, Marcus. And I am finally free." She turned her back on him. She walked across the shattered glass. Vance was waiting by the exit. His tuxedo was ruined. He was bleeding from a cut on his cheek. But he looked like a king. He held his hand out to her. She took it. His long, calloused fingers intertwined with hers. They walked out the front doors of the council headquarters. They left the toxic hierarchy behind them forever. 3 months later, the morning sun poured through massive industrial skylights. The air smelled of fresh paint, roasted coffee, clean linens. Maeve stood on the steel catwalk, overlooking the main floor of their new sanctuary. It wasn't a dark, damp basement in the transit tunnels. It was a massive, completely legal warehouse in the arts district. She had used her offshore funds to buy the building in cash. Down below, dozens of rogue shifters were eating breakfast in the open kitchen, chatting and laughing. They were safe. She leaned against the metal railing. A profound sense of peace settled deep in her bones. Have you ever finally found the place you were always meant to be? Warm, heavy hands slipped around her waist. Vance pulled her back against his solid chest. He buried his face in the crook of her neck. He inhaled her scent deeply. "The new security gates are installed," he murmured against her skin. "And the medical wing is fully stocked." "Good," she smiled. She leaned her head back onto his shoulder. "Because we have 3 new arrivals coming from the Eastern Territory tonight." He turned her around in his arms. The harsh, angry lines of his scarred face were gone. In their place was a calm, steady devotion. He didn't carry the weight of his past failures anymore. They had built this new reality together, anchored by absolute trust. "You did this, Maeve," he whispered. His golden eyes filled with awe. "You brought us all out of the dark." "We did it," she corrected softly. She reached up and traced the faded scar on his cheek. He leaned down. He kissed her. It wasn't desperate or violent like their first kiss in the shadows. It was slow, deep, searingly passionate. It was a promise of forever. Maeve tangled her fingers in his dark hair. She pulled him closer. The fire in her blood didn't burn with fear anymore. It burned with pure, unyielding love. She had lost a sterile corporate empire, but she had gained a true pack. She had gained a mate, and most importantly, she had finally found herself.